Now, we're going to see in the short future a very similar shift with the rest of the things that you carry in your pocket, with your ID card, with your driver's license, with your healthcare record, with your membership cards, and so on. So those things are naturally going to move into the wallet, into the digital identity wallet in that case. So we're working on that on the short future. The founders that I've seen to be successful, and I'm not talking about the very famous founders, I'm talking about founders that I know, are those who are mission driven. So when you have that mission, it's really easier. You have a great clarity of vision, because choices, day-to-day choices, as an executive, you can just put your glasses. Does this bring me closer to the vision, or does it not bring me closer to the vision? Success is a very personal thing for a founder. I would say that for me, success will be sitting here with you and talking to you now. Success is here. It's not in the future.
Hello, Recursive community, and welcome back to the Recursive podcast. Our next guest has a bold ambition to make digital identity services the cornerstone of all economic and social activities of people around the world. Konstantin Bezuhanov is co-founder and CEO of Evrotrust Technologies, the company that aims to solve challenges associated with secure digital identification. Evrotrust products are adopted by over 1.3 million people across 58 countries. The company has attracted partnerships with industry giants like Mastercard and leading banks such as Unicredit Bulbank, KBC, and it has been recognized by governments and the European Commission. Konstantin, it's been long due that you come to the Recursive podcast. I'm very happy that you're here. Welcome.
Thank you for the invite. Thanks for the invite.
We usually start with the beginning of a journey. And the beginning of your journey is probably the first time when you realized for yourself that entrepreneurship is the path for you. I wonder when that was.
I would say that it hasn't been like a spark moment whereby I said this is the way. Rather, it's been a slow realization connecting my past experiences and following what I'm interested in. And that kind of led me one thing to the other. I would say probably contrary to most beliefs, I didn't choose entrepreneurship in a way that it should be a financial driven decision, but it's been much more around if we wanna have a big impact on what we're doing, how do we do it?
Okay. But you also have probably interesting examples around you. Knowing part of your family, I would say that, the entrepreneurship gene is somehow planted in your family. Did you have along the way maybe mentors or, giants on whose shoulders you are actually standing?
Actually, this is a really good point that you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's been, I think it's fostered into not only in my family, but in Bulgaria as a whole. The entrepreneurship spirit, and I believe that this is the case because unlike many Western countries, we don't have very big corporations who kind of operate out of here. Of course, there are big companies, but it's not like what I've seen when I was in my years of living in London. And it's kind of an example. Everyone is starting something, whether it's with a mission and vision to be a global leader, like what we're doing in Evrotrust, or whether it's a mission or vision to just, provide services for its local community or someone in the country.
Yeah, I've never looked at it like that, but yeah, maybe it's true. I guess entrepreneurship is in some ways connected also to our need to succeed despite economic challenges, despite the lack of big corporations or some kind of like organizations that are going to give you financial security. You're looking for your way around, the system. Why were you in London? Tell me about London.
Well, basically, my journey started back at the age of about 13. I went to boarding school in the UK. I stayed there for about 5 years. It was a very interesting moment because I went there on my own. And what was very peculiar was that I went there knowing very little English. So, but my family decided that they want to send me there, and they want me to
throw you in the cold water.
You either learn to swim or dive, kind of thing. So that was a kind of a big part of decision that happened in my life. And from then on, I kind of graduated main school. Then I went to university, graduated with bachelor there, and then I moved to London for a bit to work in something that was close to my degree. I graduated with finances and accounting, and I was working in a kind of accounting and tax management consultancy.
But why was this the biggest turning point in your life?
It was very interesting because I was put in a new place for the first time in my life with the people who I didn't know, without speaking a language that I didn't know. So it really developed that skill to just get around and learn how to get around. It was very, very interesting, and I would say that's probably the first spark of skills that were developed, at least in my case, that are later required as an entrepreneur.
It's interesting because I believe that when you end up in a new place, in my case it was softer. I did speak the language, and I wasn't 13, I was 19. But it's still challenging because you're taken out of your natural environment and you're put in a totally new place. And you're actually faced with a lot of challenges that you need to solve. Things that were previously just solved by default because you were living with your parents and so on and so forth. And I remember at some point I was talking to... he was a senior executive in Mastercard living in the States. I think back then he was actually the CEO of the global company. And he himself was a migrant. He grew up, I think, in Austria, but his background was in Turkey. So his family was actually of migrants. And he said one thing that, stuck with my mind. Migrants are problem solvers because they're faced with so many challenges when they move around that they need to start thinking, how am I going to do that? And how am I going to do that in an alternative way than the people in this country are doing it because they don't have the same background. So I do believe that this kind of experience can make you a better entrepreneur, because what is an entrepreneur? A problem solver. You're constantly in the mindset of the problem solver.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on this point. And I would say that problem solving has been one of the key skills that you developed in that case. And especially, as I said, when you don't know the language.
And in many ways, as an entrepreneur, you're actually also creating your own problems because you're always trying to test yourself. Can I do that? Can I do that in an alternative way? And you need to be confident that you can find a solution to any problem out there. But I still think that 13 is quite young for this kind of experience.
Actually, in all fairness, I did see the model beforehand with my older sister. Because she went to boarding school in the UK as well. She really didn't like it at the beginning, and she absolutely loved it at the end. So I was kind of following her steps. Of course, bigger siblings are always role models for the younger kids.
They are.
So I kind of wanted to go. Actually, it was in order for me to move there, I had a bet with my parents if I could get actually into one of the schools here in one of the high schools. It was a very prestigious high school. So they said, well, if you can meet all the requirements, get in, and that could be your next step, your reward. So I had to work double in that case, study.
And did you like it at the end? Did you?
No, I loved it. Yeah, it's great fun. It's great fun.
Well, I guess then it's hard also to get back. You become this independent person.
Yeah.
For me, at least, leaving at 19 and then I don't know, starting my own life. Now it's very hard when people start having opinions about my own life, and they want me to do things differently. And I'm like, no, don't meddle. I mean, just don't do it. I think my parents don't even try to do it anymore. Yeah. Why didn't you stay there? Why did you decide to come?
It was a variety of reasons. There was opportunity to actually work on something on my own here. It was even actually I remember even doing my first internships. I did a few internships both in Bulgaria and in the UK. I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was very efficient with using the laptops and the computers. And in the rest of the time, I was working on some ideas. Back then, I had a great idea around a crowdfunding business. It was brand new back in 2016, probably. 2006.
Yeah.
And there was only one company that I was like, that's such a great idea. They're still around. They've gone quite big and they've grown up. I was like, I want to work on something like that.
Amazing. And how many startup ideas did you have around this time?
It's idea generation is like a machine.
Yeah.
I do have a list on my phone, and every time a problem or a solution comes into my mind, I kind of just write it down on a big list. Okay. And it's very, very
It's very big. Yeah. So if someone is looking for a startup idea, they can actually get in touch with you.
Yeah, but the big secret is not the idea.
Tell me about it. Where is the big secret?
The big secret is the execution. So ideas are great, and many times it's not the best idea that works or the best product. It's very much the best execution, the first person to market. Okay. So I think that's kind of a misconception. Many new founders probably are having some sort of anxiety around what should I work on. But I've seen so many successful founders who start with something, then they pivot around, and then they do like 2 or 3 changes within kind of what they want to do and what their business is, and it just works.
Yeah. Were you part of a startup before Evrotrust where you can actually study the art of execution?
I worked in a company that scaled very fast in civil engineering. It was a completely different thing. It had nothing to do with technology. But I've always had that passion for working with technologies. I've always been, we joke around with friends that I'm always kind of the early adopter, kind of the beta tester.
Okay.
And I usually like to get my hands on new products and services just to see how they are. Very interested around that. But that's kind of where I went with, getting experience around how to build a company.
Okay, and then I wonder, of the big list of ideas, why did you pick then Evrotrust? Tell me how it started. And how did you meet also your co-founders? How did it, became a founding team and an organization? Tell me the story in the beginning.
Well, credit here to my co-founder, George. The idea is his. So he was the one who actually explained it to me in a way that he had that vision of digitalizing something that back then we were very sure that the future of the economy cannot rely on physical documents. So we saw everything is digitalizing. We were very sure about that. And back at when we started Evrotrust, I would say we were. It wasn't a wide belief. And just as an example, the first clients that we spoke to, the business owners that we sell to, they were business owners of alternative channels. So it was really not the main thing. It was named alternative channels. It was like just a side thing.
Okay.
But getting back to the idea, basically, we realized that physical documents cannot provide what's needed for the economy to evolve. And in that time, George was explaining me how this could be solved, and he had that idea about using certificates. And just as a side note, George is a lawyer, so we use internally in the lingo, in the company lingo, a lot of law terms. But we were talking about how to use certificates and why do these certificates haven't had the opportunity to be used in the private sector. And the big kind of aha moment came out of the fact that it's mostly because they were very not user-friendly. So our very first idea back then was, how do we make this legally recognized solution user-friendly? And how can we get away all the hardware out of the hands of the end users?
Okay. Did you have pivoting moments since you started? How did the idea change over time? Because I can imagine that the whole digital transformation took different paths, and we started adopting different kinds of solutions. And what you do cannot be really used in an isolated space. It's always part of another digital process, right?
Yeah. So when we were thinking at the beginning about what Evrotrust can solve, we were really concentrating on the problem with signing. So we said signing is a vital process, and it's many times that we go to branches as citizens, as users, just to sign something. And if you look at the traditional paper-based process in a bank, you get a small, less than A4, A1, A2 piece of paper, and you sign it 6 times, like top right, bottom right, front, back, and so on.
I remember at some point I lost my bank cards when I was traveling in Greece, so I had to reissue all of them. And for the private ones, I'm not even speaking about the company bank card. I decided that I'm going to count how many times I'm going to sign. So for 2 cards, it was around 37 times, because I had to sign every page, so that I guarantee that it won't be faked afterwards, or it won't be exchanged. And then I was thinking, this is so absurd, especially when we already have the solutions. Why are we still doing that?
Well, it's exactly the problem that we saw back then. So that was the initial idea. We saw there's this problem around, and basically the signing process is really a process whereby you agree to something. You give agreement to enter into a relationship with another party. So this giving agreement was something that wasn't digital. We see you can log in to online banks. You can order stuff online. For small transaction values. But when there's a need to do this for something that's going to be, let's say, a regulated service, then in those cases, the signing process was not solved. So we started solving signing first.
Okay.
And upon signing, George was telling me, okay, so we're gonna get the signing is gonna be enabled from the mobile phone. We can do it in a way that the mobile phone everyone has in their pocket. Everyone knows how to use it, how to download an app. But we need to get them to come to our offices. So we need to think about a way to kind of be very close to the customer. And back then we were having ideas about, okay, maybe we can, do some partnership with the post office, with branches of banks and so on, because they're quite widespread. But then I said, why do we have to do that? So it always, with innovation always comes with a why. You always challenge the assumption with a why. So I said, why do we have to do this? And it was really, I remember it very vividly. It was one night. It was me, George, and one of the first people on the technical team, and we were sitting down and we were thinking, okay, what can we do? Let's think of a way. Okay, but the reason why people go there is to just meet someone to show their ID card. Can we use video technologies? That back then, again, video was still not very used. It wasn't. Zoom, I think, might have not been invented. We were still using Skype to have meetings. Well, at least it wasn't that big. It might have been invented. But I was like, we have Skype, we have video technologies, let's use that. And then we were thinking, but again, we had the problem of scaling. If we use that technology, it will be very difficult to scale because of you requiring basically a lot of people. At scale, you need a lot of people to answer the calls. So how can we do this automatically? And then we started researching, and we saw that it could be done automatically. The next point is, can we do it with such a level of assurance and such certainty and security that the regulators would accept it? And that was probably, we said, okay, let's do it. And that's how we kind of pivoted and started including digital identity and signatures. It was very natural.
Yeah, that was when I started working in a similar field. I was actually at first confused. Why are we talking about signatures? But at the same time, it's identity. I just couldn't understand it. And I think also for the end users, or at least the majority of the end users, they do understand the concept of the digital signature because it's so much close to what we actually do with the hand. But the identity part is something which is a bit more abstract. Yeah. And I don't think that we understand also how often our identity is used when we are getting in touch with the private, but also with the public sector. Okay, so the big problem that you're solving right now is rather connected to the necessity of users to identify themselves in front of different organizations, and it is part of a process. And I can imagine that the market can be actually very huge. But how did you decide to focus on specific use cases where you see that, okay, there's going to be probably a greater need or a greater pain?
Well, with what we're offering, it's very regulatory driven as well. So if we zoom out, leave Evrotrust, and we just zoom out and look at how an economy works, you would see that there are sectors and stakeholders which regulate it for the good of the society. And such stakeholders are the financial services, the healthcare sector, the educational sector, the utility sector, and the mobile network operators, telcos or telecoms. And there are a few others, of course, and of course the government services. And the regulation here is not something that has just popped out. It's kind of evolution. The way the society has been evolving, we're seeing that those regulations have been created in order to protect the end users. The same way you have regulation in the financial markets. So because it's very regulatory driven, it blows really, good wind in our sails when we go and we show our solution to those stakeholders. And throughout history, you'd also see that they have been actually the one that have been lagging digital adoption because of those regulations. Because regulation and innovation, we've seen that it's a bit like oil and water. They don't really mix. And when we speak to our counterparties in the banks, for instance, many times they would say that they have a really interesting, innovative process, they have the technologies to do it, but the projects get stopped at the regulatory level. And that's the reason why we decided to focus on those regulations, on solving the use case for the regulated industries. The other reason why we wanted to go that way is that we had the understanding that if we want to make it big into the identity space, it's good to tackle the most difficult problem first. And solving the most difficult problem first would give us like kind of the bingo effect of everything else. So if we manage to crack the really high assurance, maybe lower frequency use cases, we can definitely do everything else. And it's gonna be more difficult. It's gonna come at some costs, but it will validate very quickly the hypothesis if we can go global and grow very fast.
And what is the most difficult problem in the space of identity?
There are various problems around proving identity.
Okay.
And for instance, when again back, if we shift with the time machine back to when we were doing the technology, it was very difficult to prove to protect against spoof attacks. So you would see even currently you'd have these technologies whereby they rely on random commands to the user, and then a camera or algorithm behind them actually sees if the user performs those commands. So an example would be, you might have used a process like that, would be a client trying to identify for any given process, and the identity provider would ask the client to look right, move their head, move their open their mouth or something like that. Something that looks silly from the side. But actually, those are so those kind of attacks are kind of difficult to battle against. But what we saw was that they're actually not that difficult to spoof. Okay. And we had internal efforts actually to just spoof technologies. So we put our white hacker hats.
I was just about to say
in a tested environment, of course. And we started seeing where are the weaknesses of the current technologies and can we spoof them. If we can spoof them, it means that the current thing is not working and it's not going to work. And we're still doing this at the moment, but it's at accelerated level. And the acceleration comes with the introduction of AI technologies. We're, again, as I mentioned, early adopter. I'm very excited about them. And I've subscribed to way too many of those new tools. But then I'm thinking, what happens when you have malicious actors that start to utilize them in order to do more targeted and more scalable fraud campaigns?
Can you be also a malicious early adopter?
Well, if you have that hat, I'm sure you can.
Okay.
So the case here is that, and actually, to be honest, we saw such examples at the moment. I'm not sure if you read in the news recently, but there was a famous example about a finance manager who transferred 25 million. And from what I read, and I haven't dived deeply, so disclaimer to be applied, but from what I read was that there were 3 or 4 people, actually bots, on a call with the targeted persona, which impersonated his colleagues and actually gave him the instructions to transfer the money to a given account.
That sounds like a movie.
So it does sound like a movie, but actually, if you've seen, Microsoft announced, I think it was mid last year, that they only now need about a 10-second sample to be able to clone your voice and my voice and to be able to use it. So there's this technology to be able to use it afterwards. Of course, this could be used for creative purposes. So I can, do more content creation at scale if I'm a content creator, or B, I can use it if I'm a malicious actor to target personas and to actually conduct my fraud campaigns. So it's really interesting to see how this is going to evolve. And in one way, we're seeing that this would erode, unless battled correctly, it would erode the trust in the digital space. And in Evrotrust, we are on a mission to create the trust in the digital space. So it's very interesting here to see what are the tools that will help us as a society be confident in our digital interactions with other people, to be users of the new marketplaces that are created, whether it's in the metaverse or somewhere else. It doesn't really matter. But in order to be active users of those spaces, you need to have trust of them. You as a user, and the supplier as a supplier on the other side.
Wow. I think for the first time I understand why is it called trust services. So let's put it this way. The future of identity can be bright and shiny. It can be actually very exciting because there's so many use cases. Where do you see Evrotrust in this future?
So our goal from day zero of the company, and kind of lies with what we discussed earlier about which problems that we want to tackle, is that we took the hard path in order to validate for us, not for the outside community, not for our investors, but at the beginning to validate for us that this can be a global company. The reason why we want to do this, and I'm not sure if you would hear many other founders say this, is because time opportunity cost is very high for a founder. So as a founder, you would want to pick the idea of the big list of ideas or hear it from a co-founder, like in my case, in the idea that's really going to make it. And the worst idea is the one that it's just about good enough to not drop it. Mm-hmm. So you need to stress test it. You need to stress test it aggressively in a way that it's uncomfortable. But at the end, because as a co-founder, you're both an executive in a company, you're also a shareholder in the company. So we're kind of wearing two hats. Wearing the shareholder hat more is good for business. In that case, we decided to do more stress testing at the beginning in order to make sure that we can go global. The world is going to change. And like we heard recently when we went to a conference together, when the introduction of Payment Service Directive was introduced, no one knew what this meant for the financial services. Okay. Yet that imposed a massive evolution on the financial services. There are similar ongoing changes at the moment, which are regarding identity and the way that customers are protected and the way that the digital transformation is going to go. And we're very excited about this. We're positioning ourselves in a way that we can provide the best for our users, the most trust for them, biggest privacy, but also that we can provide the best service for our enterprise clients. Mm-hmm. So we are seeing ourselves as a multi-continent global identity provider.
It's very interesting that, if I can put it this way, and I'm sure that you're going to correct me, that some of your main competitors are going to be governments, because identity service is something that is actually very close related to using also public services. And it is a requirement quite often connected to your identity card, which is issued by the government in some ways. So how are you going to, where is the space for Evrotrust in this environment where the Macedonian government is going to have one, and then the Bulgarian, and then so on and so forth. And is it realistic to start thinking about an identity that could be global, where the stakeholder is not, the country itself, but it's going to be cross-border, cross-national, or supranational? I don't know.
Actually, it's a really good point, and I would agree with you. I wouldn't correct you.
Yeah.
About governments playing crucial roles in the identity business. Mm-hmm. And again, just to share our story, back when we were creating Evrotrust, we looked around and we looked at the competitors. As I said, we looked at where the weaknesses are, and out of that kind of internal study that we did, we came up with 3 things that we were very, very confident, and it was like 3 beliefs and assumptions that we have about what does the global identity provider need to have. So it doesn't have to be us, mm-hmm. but let's pick up those 3 criteria that whoever makes it into this space, whoever helps the world transition, mm-hmm. needs to have these things, needs to have that those criteria in check. Mm-hmm. The first one was, we're very, very confident about reusability. So you would see that many companies out there, they would offer an identity service that is a one-off service. Mm-hmm. So they offer the service to the enterprise, not to the user. But that just doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. It's the same way as going to Ministry of Interior, issue yourself an ID card, you use it, cut it with scissors, then go again for another one. So that was the first thing. But the second point that we came up with, that was very crucial out of the 3 things that the global identity provider needs, is exactly what you were saying. Mm-hmm. You need to have at least a government level of assurance for at least one government. The second stage is for a cluster of countries, and the third stage is to have it on a global level. Mm-hmm. So we're very, very confident. In order for this not to be a fragmented market, and we're very confident that it's not going to be, you need to have an approach to be multi-continent solution, but at the same time compliant with the local regulations. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. our belief here actually comes with the way that we've created Evrotrust, as you mentioned at the beginning, we are opening the solution to citizens all across the world. It is probably one of the advantages that we have against local solutions in terms of governments, because they're mostly focused on solving the needs for the local citizens.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't see, let's say, a government from one European country be very confident to offering digital identity services to citizens from another country to be used there.
I guess it's also a security concern, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you need to have more of a global vision and global approach around the problem. Governments are currently doing it because they're required by regulations in the European Union, and they're doing it because it's the next natural thing in order to support the digital evolution of Europe in a European level. But we're seeing this pattern all across the world. So both in the US, there is conversations in the Senate, there's conversation in Australia.
When it comes to regulations and such kind of frameworks, the European Union is actually leading here, which in many ways makes me proud, actually, because I don't know, I guess the move fast, break stuff kind of approach is when it comes to innovation, especially nowadays, and technology is something that worries me more. And I am happy that there are all these bureaucrats in the European Union who actually start thinking about safety first before we start doing things. And at the same time, when it comes to digital identity and also digital signatures, I'm just amazed how slowly we move towards the future. I was expecting that, these things are going to be much more massively adopted by citizens, and we would be, having our identity in a wallet somewhere, and we would be able to use it for all the services that we are interacting with. What I see right now is that the market is still very fragmented. So you would, it's not centralized around the user, but it's still somehow answering the requirements of the person that, or the corporation or the organization that actually requires you to identify with. And this is something that really bugs me, because the technology is here and you guys are here. And it's the companies and the corporations who are not adopting it as fast as possible. I'm even the governments in many ways are much faster than the corporations.
Well, I can relieve you.
Yeah.
If you hold another 18 months, you'd see a dramatic change in my
18 months? Okay, yeah. I'm giving you another 18 months and then I'm giving up.
We have another talk.
But you tapped into something that we haven't had before here in the podcast, and which I find very interesting. And this dichotomy, and it probably is not even dichotomy, but it's a much more complex personal identity issue that you tapped into. And that's, okay, I have the hat of the CEO of a startup that has an opportunity cost because I'm the one investing my lifetime into building this company, into solving the problem, and so on and so forth. And this time cannot be brought back. It is not something that you have. It's very scarce. At the same time, you're a shareholder of the company, probably in many of the cases the main shareholder of the company, who is also pretty much responsible for increasing the shareholder value for the other shareholders in the company. And in your case, you're also someone who is coming from has a background in finance, which in general is a bit more conservative industry, but a technology early adopter. So I'm going to make this transition, and I'm going to move to your complex identity that I'm seeing right now. And I wonder, how do you deal with that? Just recently, because I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I'm also one of the main shareholders in our company, I started thinking about the same. You're much younger than me. I'm not, ashamed to say that. So I started thinking about time. And, okay, if I want to invest my lifetime into a project, how do I want it it to be? What do I want to solve? Am I going to focus on the impact, or am I going to focus on the journey and enjoying the journey? It's a big topic, but maybe you can somehow entangle it for me. How do you have it in your head? How do you switch the hats between, let's say, first shareholder and CEO that is trying to disprove, so to say, the hypothesis as fast as possible? Because if you don't manage to do it, then you're on the right track.
It really comes down with having a really solid mission, and that's probably, I would mention something that I said earlier, that the founders that I've seen to be successful, and I'm not talking about the very famous founders, I'm talking about founders that I know, are those who are mission driven. So when you have that mission, it's really easier. You have a great clarity of vision, because choices, day-to-day choices, as an executive, you can just put your glasses. Does this bring me closer to the vision, or does it not bring me closer to the vision and the mission of the company? If it does, then it seems like a high probable right choice. Of course, as in many things in life, we're talking about probabilities in most cases. So it's not a given. The outcome does not justify the decision or the decision making. So in that case, having a strong mission about what you want to do, that's the one thing that can help you switch the hats. When you have that mission, it is easy to make the decisions, as I said, but it is also easier to get to success. Now, and that's the key here. What is success? Success is a very personal thing for a founder. And getting to the mission and the definition of success is a very personal choice, I would say. So success could be financial, but that I haven't seen that to be a winning strategy. Usually that follows when you fix something that's a real problem, and fixing the problem. And in terms of value, how do we define value? You give someone something that he values more than the money he pays you for. So when you fix that value, that's how the rest follows.
Okay. I'm doing this experiment sometimes with myself, but also with my guests, because I do believe that when we imagine a certain situation in a very visceral way, let's say how it smells, how it tastes, where we are, we can actually kind of like more decisively move towards it. So when you speak about your personal idea of success, how does it look like? Where are you? Are you sitting somewhere in a room with, I don't know, let's say George, smoking cigars, and you're telling yourself for a brief moment, because I'm sure that afterwards you would have the next goal and the next goal and the next goal, but for a brief moment you're going to look at each other and you're going to, yeah, we made it. When is that? How does it look like? What has happened? Do you have this?
I would say that for me, success will be sitting here with you and talking to you now. Success is here. It's not in the future.
It's not in the future.
It's not in the future.
Okay.
It's a personal choice. It's more of a philosophical take on the question, probably. It's not whether you're having a cigar or whether you're in a
Okay.
So it's really it's a personal choice, and I would say that it comes a lot with, again, if we look at life the same way we look at companies and startups, what is your mission? You have a mission in life. Are you closer to that mission, or are you not closer to that mission? So if you're fulfilling your mission in life, then you're successful in that way.
Okay, interesting. And why aren't founders afraid of the hard challenges? This has always been one, because sometimes I would talk to people of, test my ideas of what I would like to do with the Recursive. And every now and then there will be someone, a conservative person, who would, yeah, but this is really hard. What you're trying to do is really hard. As if this is actually supposed to discourage me. Well, yeah, that's why I'm doing it, because if it was easy, everyone else would actually be doing it. Well, why aren't they?
I can't speak for all founders. I can only say based on my experience of...
That's my secret intention, to make you joke about yourself.
So, I would say, again, doing the hard things around or choosing a hard path it is not difficult if you really believe in the problem that you're going to solve. So if you're really hungry to solve a problem, you would be, and if you know that that's the way to solve it, you would kind of follow your way through, because you want to get to solving the problem. You're not afraid of the journey, but you want to get to solving the problem. So if that's the way it has to be solved, it's just a bunch of tasks and things that need to be done. So we find the resources, the team, ourselves, we sit together and we start doing it. So again, it's being driven pretty much by the end goal.
It is also about the gratification. It is, so the harder the problem, the greater the gratification when you solve it.
Yeah, there's that psychological thing as well.
I think maybe that's it as well. It's, even in our heads, I think when it comes to dopamine, when you just get a like on your new profile photo on, let's say, Instagram or Facebook, it's not, it doesn't give you the same gratification as when you get like a like on Twitter on something that is,
or 1,000 likes.
Or 1,000 likes. Exactly. Okay. I wonder, because we need to start, we need to come closer to finishing up the conversation. I wonder how we should end. And we tapped into the philosophical questions. So it's hard to go back to, okay, let's talk about the startup and the company. But I would still like to maybe ask you about Evrotrust, and maybe look a bit into the future. Maybe you can paint us a use case where an identity service is being used in a seamless way and not the way that we would expect today. Yeah.
I think this is a great question because, as you said, signature is very easy use case for people to understand. Identity, it's still, in many people, blurred about what this is going to be and how it's going to be. But in the near future, in the very, very near future, we're going to see the same transitions that we saw with credit cards. And I would ask you have your wallet on you? You probably do, somewhere.
I do, somewhere, yeah.
In that wallet, you have a banking card, you have an ID, you have some sort of membership, gym membership. Some people carry their healthcare records, your driver's license, and so on. Now, we saw a great shift with payments and the way credit cards are being used. And it came really natural in a way that the credit card at the moment just lives in the phone. And it's being used through digital wallets like Apple Wallet or Google. Now, this is one of the things that you carry with you. And if you look at most of the digitally evolved societies at the moment, people just use they have a cashless society and they use tap on the phone to make the payments. No one really takes out their card anymore. Now, we're going to see in the short future a very similar shift with the rest of the things that you carry in your pocket, with your ID card, with your driver's license, with your healthcare record, with your membership cards, and so on. So those things are naturally going to move into the wallet, into the digital identity wallet in that case. So we're working on that on the short future. And you'll be able to use it online and physically. But if you look a bit further, so we fast forward with our time machine and we look further whereby AI has evolved. We have autonomous agents, not only as a software products. But as robotics, you have robots in your house, your car is autonomous, it drives itself, it drives you to work, and then maybe it starts going around to drive other people and work as a robotaxi.
I know.
Why not?
Yeah.
And that car and those actors are gonna need an identity of their own. They're gonna need to participate in an economy on your behalf, of course, because they're yours. They don't have their own rights, at least in the future that I'm painting at the moment.
Okay.
Disclaimer to the future, super intelligent AI.
Yeah.
But they're gonna be actors which are gonna be in the economy. They're gonna consume goods and services based on your will and the permissions that you've given them. So how do they do that? How do we solve that problem? How do we make sure that if your car buys petrol or charges itself, because it's going to be electric car most likely, at the gas station or at the EV station, and it's, how can we make sure that it pays out of your money, that you've given right for that? And all of those agreements and all of those identifications around those new actors within the economy would need to be solved. That again is a digital identity problem.
I'm imagining also that so Face ID helped a lot. It made it actually it made the experience a bit more seamless. I still have the 2 taps, on my wallet where I'm actually consenting to pay. But I can imagine that in the future, I'm just going to walk around with my face and my identity will be on me in many ways, because I will be scanned and I will be filmed more or less all the time whenever I get into an interaction with a business or a service or whatever. So that's not going to be the problem if they can identify me so much. I guess the big problem is going to be the consent. Where they're going to, when am I going to be okay that my identity is used and when not?
Yeah. And
even today, now in today's world, this is the big problem.
And again, when we talked about the bureaucrats and as you said, the officials who are actually creating those frameworks, most of them are to to protect the end user. And I would say that governments and officials have been actually, at least the ones that we're speaking to, have been very, very forward-looking into how they can introduce both innovation, but also protect the end user. Privacy and you being the center and the owner of your data, as we saw with the GDPR regulation that came a few years ago, is very, very key around that. Because the dystopian future that we can paint here is that there'll be cameras everywhere, I'll be scanned all the time, everyone will know who I am, but I don't think we're going to go like very big brother, like on that kind of side of the scale. I think there'll be protection, there'll be privacy around who can use my data, how it can be used. And then we're also looking at models whereby, because at the moment, especially with many of the enterprises, we're seeing your personal data being scattered across various different actors, enterprises, in many different formats. And you kind of use different services, but those services do not really talk to each other. So we're also looking, I'd say it's more of a midterm thing, but we're also looking at a way, how can you benefit from that? How can you benefit to prove, let's say, get a better insurance policy, life insurance policy, based on your participation in the gym membership? So how can we do that cross data information if you give right for that data to be transferred for you? So I think we're going to move more around customization of services and privacy, you giving access. I know the European Commission is very strong on this, to put the right rules for your data to be really yours and to be not used for surveillance reasons, let's say. And that's a bit of a brighter future than the one that we spoke about earlier.
I'm also optimistic about this one, especially because my data and my identity is not going to be owned by a corporation, but I'm going to be actually owning it and giving them the consent if they can use it or not. And then I think we can, if we so to say, circle that around the user, I think we would have better chances of protecting it and using it in a meaningful way. But yeah, I think for the first time, I'm really excited about the problem that you're solving. I must admit, I have always liked the team, but I guess I always saw that as part of the digital transformation. But when you tap into the identity, then like a whole new world opens up.
Well, I'm very glad that we had this conversation. Then.
I'm also very glad. I've told you, it's been long due. Thank you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to how Evrotrust is going to unfold, and also the services of Evrotrust are going to unfold in the future. I hope that you would also manage to work with customers who actually understand and are excited about this part of the future, so that they can develop them with you. Because as long as you're solving, the old fashioned problems of corporations, I guess this is not going to happen. You would be still driven by the market, and I hope that the market will be excited about more meaningful ways of using identity in the future. I guess it depends on that. And I hope that you would have many, many, many such successful days as today. And you won't lose the sense of purpose and believe in the mission. Because from what I understand, this is what is making you happy right now and satisfied and content with being part of Evrotrust.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for the invite. It's been great talking to you, sharing more behind the curtain about how we look at the world, what we're seeing, and where we see opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very excited about what's coming along. And we'll catch up soon to check if what we said here happened.
Yeah, we will definitely keep track of you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
And if you are just as passionate about innovation as we are, hit subscribe for the Recursive podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere.